Alright, so today I'm going to show you what to think about when you are looking at poetry for a test and what might be asked of you. So follow along with me. We're going to read the obstacle. I'm going to read it out loud first, all the way through, and then we're going to go through and think about this. I was climbing up a mountain path, and this is called an obstacle, with many things to do, important business of my own and other people's too, when I ran against a prejudice that quite cut off the view. My work was such as could not wait, my path quite clearly showed, my strength and time are limited, I carried quite a load, and there that hulking prejudice sat all across the road. So I spoke to him politely, for he was huge and high, and begged that he would move a bit, and let me travel by. He smiled, but as for moving, he didn't even try. And then I reasoned quietly with that colossal mule. My time was short, no other path, the mountain winds were cool. I argued like a Solomon, and he sat there like a fool. Then I flew into a passion, and I danced, and I howled, and swore. I pelted and belabored him, till I was stiff and sore. He got as mad as I did, but he sat there as before. And then I begged him on my knees, I might be kneeling still. If so, I hope to move that mass of obdurate ill will, as well invite the monument to vacate Bunker Hill. So I sat before him helpless, in an ecstasy of woe. The mountain mists were rising fast, the sun was sinking slow, when a sudden inspiration came, as sudden winds do blow. And I took my hat, I took my stick, my load I settled fair. I approached that awful incubus with an absent-minded air, and I walked directly through him as if he wasn't there. So, what might they ask us about poetry? One thing I know that they're going to probably ask is a structure of the poem, especially like when we looked at Poet X and so on, and how structure helped Elizabeth Abasito. So structure is something they're going to ask you about, and that goes along with the stanzas and maybe the purpose of each stanza. Another thing that I'm sure they're going to ask is the theme. Now, often with poetry, where do you think we find the theme? At the end of usually each stanza. And the other things that they might look for are tone and mood, right? So what tone is the author trying to get across? What mood is the reader feeling at the time? That kind of thing. They're going to also ask you for speaker and setting. Remember, when we think about narrative, we think about the character or the speaker in poetry and the setting. Surely they're going to ask you a little bit about literary devices. Not always, but sometimes. And when I say literary devices, what do I mean? I mean things like simile, metaphor. Surely you can think of some of these on your own. Personification, allusions, not illusions, but allusions. That's when you're referencing something outside of the text. Symbols. Is that it? I think that's about it. Imagery, maybe. You guys are good with imagery. All right. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to pay attention to these things that we brainstormed as I go through each stanza. First stanza, I was climbing up a mountain path. Immediately, who do I have? I have first person point of view. This is the speaker. And we now have the setting. The setting is climbing a mountain. Okay? Let's talk about theme. Last sentence is what we're going to look at for theme. That quite cut off the view. Who is cutting off the view? Now, remember about those literary devices? We've got this person. When I ran against a prejudice, first of all, prejudice is not a person. Prejudice is an abstract noun, so it's something that you have against somebody. And so this is personification. I might be using the wrong pen. My bad. Personification. So prejudice is personified. Prejudice is cutting off the view. I probably can connect these two things, but I'm going to hold off on the theme. Just going to make sure I go through and probably circle each line at the end. So, stanza 1, we ran into prejudice. Okay, stanza 2, summarize this. Prejudice would not move. Stanza 3. At this point, she tried being polite. At stanza 4, at this point, she tries to reason with him. And then, stanza 5, I got upset with him. So you can see a shift here. And then we're going to look at these last 3 stanzas real quick. Hold on one second. Okay, stanza 6. Leave room. I begged him to move. Stanza 7. I sat helpless. And stanza 8. And we have this word, I think, it's important, called until. Where did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? Well, until, there's a hint of until at the end. And then finally in stanza 8, I walked right through. It's okay, come on. All right, so I also want to remind myself that the theme tends to be here at the end of each stanza. So I'm going to highlight that in green or box it off or whatever. So that when I look back at it, I can think about it. Okay. Right. Also, this is really definitely, see over here where it's talking about he, and there that hulking prejudice sat all across the road, so I spoke to him. So this goes back to that idea of personification. So I have confirmed that he is equal to prejudice. Okay, so we're personifying something. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but this colossal, it's mentioned down here in the notes. It's an adjective that means extremely large. This is an illusion, and it's a mythical illusion. And this one over here, Solomon, is a story of the Bible, so that isn't an illusion, but a biblical illusion. So it means something. Surely it does. All right, the mood and the tone. I would say that because the stanzas 1 through 3, because I summarized them out to the side there, stanzas 1 through 3 is she seems determined and polite. And then you get to stanza 4, right about here. And we get a shift. And so stanza 4, the shift feels like the speaker starts arguing. And then we get down to stanza 5. And in stanza 5, she starts to get angry. And 6, if it was on the back, 6, she's starting to beg. 7, helpless. And 8, she feels finally empowered. So you see there's a shift. So eventually we've got changes in mood. And these are based on her emotions. All right, and that was something that helped me with the stanzas as well. So now let's think about the speaker. Okay, so the speaker seems to me to be I say she, okay, mostly because I think I'm doing what I'm not supposed to do, which is associate the author with the speaker. But the speaker, the speaker is someone who is facing prejudice. Now, prejudice is personified, right? So it might not be a literal prejudice, right? It could be more like an abstract prejudice, but it seems literal. She's on a mountain. She's facing prejudice, and she's struggling to deal with it. And I know this because I had to look at for the speaker, and I had to look for the setting, right? And then over here, the speaker does decide to overcome or ignore, it just depends on what you think, prejudice at the end. And she just walks right through it. Also, while I'm back here, I might tell you that this is another illusion. And you can see the footnote down at the bottom. It tells us what it's about. Bunker Hill was a monument built to commemorate a battle at a place called Bunker Hill. So it's just sort of like it should make you think about war. And the monument is hard to move. So it's used purposely here to evoke that sense. So now that I've sort of analyzed everything, the last thing I need to really do is tie it all together, which is a theme. And I can look at each of the ends of my stanzas. I'm just going to read them out loud because I think that's important to do. That quite cut off the view, sat all across the road. He didn't even try. He sat there like a fool. But he sat there as before. To vacate Bunker Hill, hard to move. And as sudden winds do blow, all of a sudden, as if he wasn't there. So she goes from something got in her way, cut off the view, it blocked her road, it became an obstacle, and it wouldn't move, kept giving her a hard time, it was too hard to get through, and then just suddenly as winds do blow, which means quickly, it changed, and poof, he was gone because she goes right through him. So as I'm looking through that, I'm thinking to myself about the theme. Probably related. The setting helps us think about climbing a mountain, right? And when we think about that symbolically, climbing a mountain probably means getting through something difficult. And also, maybe the mountain could represent be prejudice. So a mountain of prejudice. And then at some point, right? And either failing. Did she fail? I don't think so. Or overcoming. So that's what I think the theme is. And so this is how I go about thinking about poetry. One more time. I want you to do the same thing, okay? Because you've got the same thing to do it with on Common Lit. You're going to annotate though there. You're going to look for structures in your stanzas and your purpose. You're going to look for theme. You're going to look for tone and mood. You're going to look for the speaker and the setting. And you're going to look for illusions. You can use the same color coding that I did, and then that way you can highlight in those colors on Common Lit when you start looking for them. Make sure that you annotate perfectly like I did, where you've got everything sort of working together to help you understand the poem. You have the rest of class.